someone says this. It happens over and over. Yesterday, for example, I followed my prescribed meal plan almost perfectly, and I even skipped dinner. So I woke up this morning and my blood sugar was 300. This is ridiculous. Why should I bother even trying? That doesn't sound like pleasant words that they're given. That self-talk doesn't sound pleasant to me. Here's what we need to be thinking and focusing on. Pleasant words are like honey. They are sweet to the spirit and they bring healing to the body. Think about pleasant words that you can say to yourself. You know, you've got two things happening to you right now. You've got a feel-good page and a feel-bad page. Now, just looking at that little diagram there, which page do you think I would say you need to be reading from most of the time? Yeah, that's bigger. You need to emphasize that page. He who seeks good finds goodwill, but evil comes to him who searches for it. Well, look for the good. Look for it. Focus on it. It'll make a difference. I like this book. It was one of the first books that I got in the early 1990s. You know, you can go to Amazon and places, you can get just a proliferation of books about diabetes management and all the things that relate to it. I went to Dr. Hellman in 1986, that leading endocrinologist who got me to Dr. Zemansky. I asked him about books that I could read. There was one that was on the market for people with diabetes. One. I got it. Now there are multitudes. In fact, I've added 3 to the multitudes also. But one of the books, and I used this with another guy who had type 1 diabetes who was really hurting. We would meet together once a week and we'd go over certain things from this book. And this guy was diagnosed with diabetes when he was 10, this doctor who wrote the book. You are the best available source of support for living well with diabetes. You are always there, and you know yourself well. No one else can take care of you as well as you can. Now, there was one doctor who wrote from Joslin Diabetes Center. He wrote this book called Outsmart Diabetes. And within that, he gives affirmations. And I just adjusted them a little bit and used them in one of my books. He said, and this is how you need to be talking to yourself. I am a strong and self-assured individual, so that when monitoring or scheduling requirements affect my activities with others, I handle my needs without giving in to group pressures. I feel comfortable with and am able to educate those around me about why I need to frequently check and count my carbohydrates. I feel comfortable in my ability to make appropriate adaptations so that I can participate in social activities that I enjoy. Well, that's the way to talk to yourself, like that. You know, you can make a statement. I wish I was, or I'm glad I'm not. And I want to show you which statement is more effective. I wish I was healthier, wealthier, wiser, like so-and-so. Oh, I think I read a passage, peace of mind brings health to the body, but jealousy is like a cancer. You remember that earlier? You go making a statement like, I wish I was like so-and-so, it would be easy to develop resentment and envy if you look at it that way. But another way to look at it is I'm glad I'm not. Are you glad that you're not James Havens, who went for 7.5 years just to barely stay alive? Yeah. Here was Dr. Hellman's office in Kansas City, right here. Trinity Lutheran Hospital was right next to him. And you could go up on the 3rd floor of his office, and he had a door that would go right into the hospital. And on that wing of the hospital, the only patients were people with diabetes. When I was 37 years old, I had a laminectomy procedure on the back, on my spinal column. I was in there for 10 days. I was in that wing of the hospital with just other people with diabetes. I was about 36 or 7. 4 people were younger than me, and they were already blind. One person was just a little bit older than me and was already blind. And one that was next to me was a 27-year-old who was blind. He was already blind. He was 27 years old. And you look at this a little bit closer. He blamed any and everyone for his situation except himself. Nurses would come in and try to help him, and he would lambaste them. He would just blast at them, cuss them out. He would bang against the wall. Well, that wall was the wall that separated me from him. And here I am trying to recover on the other side. And he was so angry, but he did not accept any responsibility for himself. I'm glad I'm not fighting a losing battle by just starving to temporarily keep my blood sugars down, or believing that ignorance is bliss, or making stupid decisions like that guy was, or being bitter and blaming others like him. We need to have a positive, grateful attitude like Elizabeth Hughes. Elizabeth Hughes was diagnosed when she was 11 years old. It was in 1918. She was 75 pounds at that time. That girl, 75 pounds. And she lived for over 4.5 years before she went to Dr. Banting. Here's how she looked. You can see her sunken jaws there, cheeks. In 1918, she was 5 foot tall, 75 pounds, 11 years old. 400 to 600 calories per day for several weeks. Sometimes 850. It brought her, by doing that, brought her down to 60 pounds. She hardly ever showed sugar. And when Banting examined her on her 16th birthday, she would turn, on the 16th, that is of August, she would turn 15 in 3 days and weigh 45 pounds. Now you can imagine what that looked like. Her father was it doesn't matter what your economic background is. Her father was the governor of New York. He became the Secretary of State under the Harding administration. They had to move to Washington, D.C. Everything was very hectic there. They were able to hire a nurse from Dr. Jocelyn from Boston to help her with her situation. But it was too stressful there, so they sent her to the island of Bermuda. And she wrote to her mom about every day. And she wrote to her about what was happening. She wasn't writing, "Oh, I'm so hungry, I feel so in such pain," and all that. No, none of that. She just talked about the good things that she could see each day, the wonderful things. And then when she received the insulin, she said, "Oh, it is simply too wonderful for words, this stuff. It's unspeakably wonderful." And how could she endure for 4 years? She appreciated insulin as a gift, and her letters focused on being positive and grateful. They were mostly an upbeat recounting of her days. Can we do that? Recount the day. Look at the good. It'll make a difference for your health and the way that you feel in your outlook. I want to close with this little video here about insulin and the difference it's made. And remember all these different medications, like take for example Januvia. What does that do? It's an incretin hormone that actually, the medication, it helps with the incretin hormone. You have these hormones that they're kind of like messengers. They go over to the pancreas. You've eaten some carbohydrates, and the message comes, and they can give the exact amount. The message is the exact amount of carbohydrates you've eaten to the pancreas. The pancreas then releases that just the right amount of insulin. God's designed the body in this way. And then if you need more, it starts manufacturing more insulin in the beta cells. But there's something that gets in the way in type 2 diabetes. It's called an enzyme, DPP4. It gets in there and it stops the communication. you don't get the proper amount of insulin then because it cuts it off. But Januvia keeps the message going. It all relates to insulin. The discovery of insulin has saved millions of lives. I've lived close to 61 years now because insulin was discovered.
Gone a long way to give patients more control over their own management, and delivery systems have dramatically improved. Thinner needles, disposable syringes, pens, pumps, and more. But the power of the insulin story is most evident in the children whose lives it saved. Elizabeth Hughes lived until 1982 and became a wife, mother, and grandmother. Bob Cleveland's older brother Gerald lived to age 93, surviving over 75 years with diabetes thanks to the miracle of insulin. And nearly 90 years after Fred Banting conceived of a crazy idea, Bob Cleveland stands as a shining example of the power of this discovery and the millions of lives it has saved.
I've been on insulin for 35 years, 26 years, 13 years now.
12 and a half years, 8 years, about a year and a half. A year and 2 weeks.
To think of a condition that prior to the discovery of insulin was completely untreatable, and patients die because of the lack of being able to receive insulin, is inconceivable today.
My insulin is like my best friend.
It's a love-hate relationship.
The reality is when I take insulin, I'm not different anymore. And this is what insulin allows me to do. It allows me as a type 2 diabetic to be normal.
Insulin technically is a chemical that allows your body to use what you're eating for energy, but without insulin, you couldn't survive.
It's a stage of the development of treating diabetes. It's not the final stage, it's not the first stage, but it's where we are.
Well, so gratitude, the benefits, you're more optimistic. You get along with others better. If you're more optimistic, of course you would be. Gratitude does that. You sleep better. Yeah, I wanted to talk about sleep tonight. I think I'm running out of time. You're more compliant to taking your medication and following a meal plan. You move more, which is good. I think that all has to do with optimism, doesn't it? And you reduce stress with all of that. The research indicates that. Now, what are the ways that we can control stress, which can really affect our blood sugar levels? Well, sleep's one way, and I'm going to talk about that next time. Gratitude is another. Water is another. And you know, another one is the size of meals that you eat.